The yellow bus shuddered like an old refrigerator whenever it idled at a light. Vinyl seats stuck to the back of knees, windows were ringed with fingertip smudges, and the ceiling rattled a loose screw beat above the chatter of 20 kids who had learned every rut on Cypress Avenue by heart. Somewhere near the middle, Maya Bell kept her backpack on her lap and her eyes on the passing storefronts the way other kids watched cartoons, absorbed, quiet, counting. Counting settled her. She counted streetlights, 13 on the stretch between Franklin and Harris, counted stop signs, 4, counted the tiny breaths her nerves took when the bus lurched. It wasn't that she didn't like rides, it was that rides like to surprise you. Counting made surprises smaller. "Feet out of the aisle," barked Mr. Klein, the driver, into the rear view without turning his head. His voice could peel a sticker off a window. 2 boys yanked their sneakers back. Mr. Klein's gaze climbed to find Maya in the mirror, as if drawn there by a magnet he didn't trust. He didn't need a reason. The reason was always ready on his tongue. "You, Belle," he snapped. "Sit back. You're not the hall monitor." Maya wasn't standing. She was only leaning forward, watching for the green awning that always puffed in the wind outside Mr. Patel's corner store, the place where the bus bumped hardest. She sank a little to make the mirror happy. From the seat across the aisle, Jules whispered, "Ignore him. He's allergic to joy." Maya pressed a smile into her sleeve. She'd learned a while ago that some grown-ups noticed you like you were a wrong answer on a test, even when you weren't writing. The noticing came with little dings. An extra warning, a shorter tone, a look that said, "Don't try me." She kept her counting to herself. The bus rolled through the light at Harris. Outside, an early cold had slid over the neighborhood. Tracks of breath fogged on the glass. A dog tugged its owner toward a shrub. Somewhere, a siren wound a lazy thread through the air, not close, not urgent, just city sound. "Backpack zipped," Mr. Klein ordered. "No food, no horseplay. This isn't recess. This is a vehicle." Jules mouthed vehicle like it tasted sour. The little second grader in front of Maya fumbled with a juice pouch and lost. Apple splashed his sleeve. He froze. "I said no food," Mr. Klein barked, breaking a shade too hard for the upshift. Heads bobbed. "You kids never listen. Useless." The word clanged. It wasn't the first time he'd thrown it like a can down the aisle. It always rolled back to Maya somehow, even when she was silent. She pressed her palm over the little boy's straw hole to stop the leak and whispered, "It's okay. Napkin in the pocket." The boy nodded, eyes big and wet. Maya passed him one of her tissues and held the empty pouch steady so it wouldn't slip. In the rear view, Mr. Klein watched. "Belle, I said sit back. You want to drive this thing? Sit back." She folded into the seat again, counting. 1, 2, 3 store windows with black lettered for lease signs. 1, 2, 3 quick taps against the seam of her jeans, steady as the metronome video Aunt Nina used when she'd taught her a thing last summer at the community center. Maya didn't think about that lesson much unless her mind went fuzzy. Then she heard Aunt Nina's voice in the living room. The afternoon light a syrupy gold. You start by checking if they respond. You shout, you tap the shoulder. Then you call 911. Then you push, steady and strong, count out loud. Don't be afraid to be loud for the right reasons, baby. Maya wasn't afraid of loud for the right reasons. She just wasn't sure the world liked when it came from her mouth. The bus groaned over the familiar pothole by Mr. Patel's shop. The green awning flapped a wet ripple. They rattled past a laundromat, a barber shop with 2 men already arguing about the Rockets, a florist arranging sunflowers in a tin bucket. Then the view opened to the small triangle park where pigeons held city meetings and joggers cut corners. Jules had her earbuds in one ear and out the other, split between a beat and a rumor. "They say there's a pop quiz in Ms. Chan's class," she said, "on chapters we didn't even do." "Then it's not a pop quiz," Maya murmured. "It's a pop ambush." Jules snorted. The second grader turned around to show Maya the apple stain, now a damp star. She smiled back, small and reassuring. Mr. Klein flicked the wipers even though the windshield was only veined with dry streaks. He liked the sound of control. He liked the sight of his hand on the lever. Then, as the bus crested the slight rise by the park, the world gathered itself and changed shape. It was small at first, a color that didn't belong to the grass, a shoe maybe where shoes shouldn't be. Maya leaned forward an inch and the mirror caught her again, but this time Mr. Klein's eyes had turned to the road. The shape lengthened, an arm at a wrong angle, a jacket bunched like someone had shrugged out of their body. Maya's stomach went weightless. Her counting stopped. "Is that—" Jules began, pulling her earbud free. The bus hissed as Mr. Klein feathered the brake. He didn't like surprises either, but for different reasons. The kids closest to the front had gone quiet, heads tilted. The little boy with the apple stain stood up on his knees and peered over the seatback. On the grass near the curb, a man lay on his side, face turned to the sky. A grocery bag had spilled oranges that gleamed like signal flares. Traffic on the opposite lane slowed. A woman on a bicycle hovered 10 feet away, hands shaking, phone clutched but not moving. Mr. Klein muttered, probably sleeping it off. His hand lifted for the turn signal. Not our problem. Maya's heart thudded once hard. She could hear Aunt Nina's voice without trying now, clear as the tick of a clock. Check for danger, check for response. Stop the bus, Maya said before she knew she'd said it. Her voice wasn't loud, but the aisle heard her anyway. In the mirror, Mr. Klein's eyes snapped to her. You don't give orders on my vehicle. He's not moving, Maya said, and this time her voice had a spine. Please. A car behind them honked, impatient. The honk cracked something that made the scene feel real, not far away. The bicyclist took one trembling step closer to the man and then back like the ground had turned to ice. Kids, stay seated, Mr. Klein commanded, but his foot had already deepened on the brake. The bus gave a last squeal and settled against the curb. Maya was on her feet before the air hiss finished sighing. The second grader grabbed the back of her hoodie. Don't go. It's okay, Maya said, and surprised herself by believing it. She slid her backpack straps up onto both shoulders. Her palms itched, not with fear, but with the need to do something they'd been taught to do. Belle! Mr. Klein's voice cracked like a snapped ruler. Sit down. You don't know anything. You'll make it worse. Useless. Jules stood too. She knows stuff. Let her. The bus doors folded open with their tired accordion wheeze. Cold air moved down the aisle in a ribbon. Outside, one of the oranges rolled, bumped the curb, stopped like a little sun caught in a gutter. Maya stepped into the stairwell and felt the whole bus behind her. Eyes, breaths, the weight of waiting. She paused at the bottom step and took one breath the way Aunt Nina had taught her, from the belly, slow and steady, until the shake in her hands smoothed. Check for danger. Check for response. She hopped down to the sidewalk and crossed the thin strip of grass. Up close, the man looked older than he had from the window, the gray at his temples a salt frost. His chest didn't look like anything until you wanted it to move. Then it looked stubbornly still. Sir, Maya said, kneeling. Her voice was calm because she made it be. She set her backpack by her knee. Can you hear me? No answer. The bicyclist hovered, eyes wide. I called, but I didn't know what to do. It's okay, Maya said, and the words fit her mouth like they'd been waiting there. She reached out and tapped the man's shoulder, firm. Sir, can you hear me? The city noise faded to a thin hum. Somewhere behind her, the bus engine idled like a held breath. Maya leaned in and listened for the sound she needed more than any horn or order or insult in the world. She didn't start counting yet. She was making sure. The grass was cold and damp beneath Maya's knees. She leaned closer to the man's face, waiting, straining, praying for a whisper of breath. Her ear hovered just above his mouth, her cheek angled to feel any warmth. Nothing. His chest was still, stubborn as stone. The oranges from his bag glowed around them like scattered lanterns, rolling only when a car passed with enough breeze to nudge them. The bicyclist shifted nervously from foot to foot, her phone still clutched in her hand. Is he? She asked, her voice thin. Maya's heart thudded once hard, but her mind reached for the memory she'd practiced with Aunt Nina. If no response, if no breath, you start compressions. Don't wait. Don't freeze. Don't be afraid to be loud for the right reasons. Call 911, Maya said, steady though her hands trembled. Tell them he's not breathing. The bicyclist blinked, then nodded and fumbled with her screen. Behind her, the bus hissed as its doors closed again. Mr. Klein's voice boomed from the window. Belle, step away! I told you, you'll make it worse. Get back on this bus right now. The words sliced the air, sharp and dismissive. Maya swallowed them down. She had swallowed words before, but this time she didn't let them stick. She pressed her small palms together over the man's chest, right between the ribs like she'd practiced on the dummy at the community center. Her arms locked straight, her shoulders hovered above her hands. She could hear Aunt Nina's voice guiding her through the hum of blood in her ears. 1, 2, 3, 4. Her hands pushed, steady and strong. The man's chest resisted at first, then gave slightly, the sound of air shifting faint in the silence. Jules had come down the bus steps now, ignoring Mr. Klein's shouts. She hovered at the edge of the grass, eyes wide. "Maya, are you sure?" "Yes," Maya said, her breath coming short with each count. "I have to." Her arms trembled, but she pushed again and again. 5, 6, 7, 8. Mr. Klein stormed down from the bus, his heavy boots crunching on the pavement. "Get your hands off him," he barked. "You're a child, you don't know what you're doing." The bicyclist, still on her phone, raised a shaking hand. "The dispatcher says she's right. She has to keep going until paramedics arrive." That halted him. For a second, the driver's anger hung in the cold air with nowhere to land. Maya didn't look up. She counted, each number a beat that steadied her nerves. 13, 14, 15. Sweat dampened her hairline even in the chill. The man's chest rose and fell only with her effort, no breath yet of his own. Behind them, the other children crowded the windows, their faces pale and pressed against the glass. The little boy with the juice stain whispered something no one could hear, but his lips spelled out, "Go, Maya, go!" 22, 23, 24. Her arms burned, but she didn't stop. 25, 26, 27. Mr. Klein stood frozen now, torn between outrage and the weight of everyone watching. The bicyclist shouted encouragement from her phone conversation. Jules knelt beside Maya, ready if needed. And then, a cough. Small, sharp, but real. The man's chest jerked. Air scraped through his throat. Maya froze only long enough to hear it, then leaned back, tears stinging her eyes. "He's breathing," she whispered, the words breaking free with relief. The bicyclist cried out, "He's breathing! She got him back!" Cheers erupted from inside the bus, muffled but fierce, fists pumped against the windows. The little boy slapped his palms together in applause. Maya sat back on her heels, panting, her hands red from the effort. She had never felt so tired, or so certain. The man's eyelids fluttered. He groaned faintly, shifting like someone pulled from the depths of sleep. Sirens wailed in the distance, closer now, winding through traffic. Maya turned toward the sound, her shoulders sagging. Jules put a hand on her back. "You did it," she whispered. Mr. Klein, standing stiff beside them, cleared his throat. His face was pale, his jaw clenched. He muttered, "Lucky guess," but the words sounded hollow, even to him. The paramedics arrived in a flash of red lights, leaping from the ambulance with bags and monitors. They knelt beside the man, checking vitals, securing oxygen, asking rapid-fire questions Maya couldn't answer. One of them glanced up at her. "Who started compressions?" Maya raised a hand timidly. The medic gave a sharp nod. "You kept him alive until we got here. You probably saved his life." The words rang louder than any insult ever thrown at her. Inside the bus, the kids erupted in cheers again. Jules squeezed her shoulder. The bicyclist touched her arm gently, whispering, "You were brave. Don't forget that." Maya just sat there, staring at her hands, still feeling the weight of each push. The man was lifted onto a stretcher, breathing shallow but steady now, his chest rising on its own. As the ambulance doors closed, one of the paramedics paused. He looked at Maya, really looked at her, and said, "Don't ever let anyone call you useless again." The doors slammed. The sirens flared. The ambulance pulled away. Maya stayed kneeling in the grass, her heart still racing, her palms tingling with the memory of saving. Behind her, Mr. Klein shifted, but his words caught in his throat. For the first time, the silence from him felt like victory. The ambulance's siren faded into the distance, swallowed by the hum of Houston traffic. For a long moment, the bus sat idling at the curb, its students still plastered against the windows, their faces a blur of awe and chatter. The oranges left behind glowed in the grass like reminders of what had just happened. Maya stayed kneeling, her hands pressed together tightly. She felt as if her palms still carried the beat of the man's heart, even though he was gone now, swept away by the paramedics into a world of monitors and bright lights. Jules crouched beside her. "Maya, you really did it. He wasn't even breathing. And then," her voice cracked into a whisper, "and then he was." The bicyclist, still trembling, bent down and placed a hand on Maya's shoulder. "They said his name when they checked his wallet. He's Mr. Thompson, retired science teacher. He lives 3 blocks over. Everyone knows him. If you hadn't been here—" She trailed off, shaking her head, her eyes wet. Maya's throat closed. She wanted to answer, but her chest was too tight with relief and shock. Back on the bus, kids started spilling into the aisle, whispering loud enough for the driver to hear. "She saved him! She's a hero! She's not useless!" Mr. Klein gripped the wheel harder than necessary. His knuckles blanched white. He barked, "Seats! Everyone sit down now!" But the edge in his voice wasn't command anymore. It was desperation. The little boy with the apple stain piped up from his seat. "She's the reason he's alive! You called her useless!" The bus filled with murmurs, like wind rushing through leaves. Maya felt the heat of their eyes on her as she climbed the steps slowly, Jules steadying her elbow. When she reached her seat, silence spread for a moment. Then a ripple of clapping began. Tentative at first, then swelling, until the entire bus thundered with applause. Maya sat down, cheeks burning, clutching her backpack. For the first time, she didn't feel small in her seat. She felt tall enough to see over every insult ever thrown at her. By the time the bus rolled to the next stop, word had already begun to spread. A woman who had stopped on the street filmed the scene on her phone. Maya kneeling, pushing steady on the man's chest, her lips moving as she counted. The video hit social media within an hour. The caption read, "A little girl just saved a man's life in front of our bus stop. Remember her name? Maya Bell." Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times. Local news anchors replayed the footage with solemn voices, calling it a remarkable act of courage. At home that evening, Naomi, Maya's older sister, burst through the door waving her phone. "Maya, you're on TV. They're calling you the girl who brought back Mr. Thompson." Their mother pressed a hand over her heart. "Mr. Thompson? The science teacher who used to volunteer at the library?" "Yes," Naomi said. "He's stable. They said he'll make a full recovery." Maya sat on the couch, staring at her hands. The skin at the heel of her palms was red and tender. "I just did what Aunt Nina taught me," she murmured. Her mother knelt in front of her, tears glistening in her eyes. "Baby, that's the point. You listened. You cared. You saved a life." Across town, in a sterile hospital room, Mr. Thompson opened his eyes for the first time since collapsing. A nurse leaned close and smiled. "You're lucky, sir. A little girl kept you here until we got to you." Mr. Thompson blinked, his voice raspy. "A little girl?" "She did CPR," the nurse explained. "Without her, we wouldn't be talking right now." Mr. Thompson closed his eyes, whispering faintly, "Find her. I want to thank her." The next morning, the school buzzed like a hive. Students crowded the halls with whispers and wide eyes. When Maya stepped off the bus, a group of fifth graders broke into applause again. Teachers pulled her aside, hugging her, telling her how proud they were. Even Ms. Chan, the strict math teacher, paused in the doorway. "Maya Bell, I hear you saved a man's life yesterday. That takes more courage than any test in my class. Don't you forget that." Maya flushed and ducked her head, but inside, warmth spread like sunrise. Mr. Klein, however, walked into the building differently. The whispers followed him too, but they weren't applause. They were questions. "That's the driver who called her useless. He told her to stop. She saved him anyway." Mr. Klein kept his eyes down, but the shame sat heavy on his shoulders. That afternoon, Maya's mother received a call. It was from the hospital. Mr. Thompson wanted to see Maya. When they arrived, he was propped up in bed, a soft smile tugging at his tired face. His eyes lit when he saw her. "You," he rasped. "You kept me here. They told me everything." Maya shuffled, clutching her backpack strap. I remembered what to do." He reached out a trembling hand. She placed hers in his. "Do you know what a teacher lives for?" he asked. "To see a student prove the world wrong. Yesterday, you were my teacher." Tears slid down Maya's cheeks. By evening, the video had spread beyond Houston. National anchors replayed the clip. Hashtag swirled. Maya saved him. Respect her. Not useless. Angela Carter's words once had echoed in courthouses and vigils. Now Maya Bell's actions lit screens across America. And while Mr. Klein sat in his silent apartment watching the same clip on the evening news, he heard the medic's words again, replayed on loop. "Don't ever let anyone call you useless again." For the first time, he had no defense. By the next morning, Maya's name was everywhere. Local channels replayed the shaky phone footage of her kneeling in the grass, her small hands pressing steady into Mr. Thompson's chest while her lips counted out the beats. The clip was spliced with a reporter's solemn voice. 9-year-old Maya Bell performed CPR on a man twice her size, keeping him alive until paramedics arrived. Without her quick thinking, doctors say he may not have survived. At school, whispers followed her down the hall like an echo. Some kids gave her high fives, others stared in wide-eyed awe. A group of second graders asked her to show them how to do chest compressions on a teddy bear during recess. Even teachers, normally pressed for time, paused in the hall to pat her shoulder or say, "Proud of you, Maya." It was overwhelming. She kept her head down, her hands clutching the straps of her backpack. Part of her wanted to disappear. Another part, a quieter, braver part, whispered that she had done something no insult could ever erase. Meanwhile, Mr. Klein walked into the building under a very different gaze. Students muttered when he passed. Teachers pursed their lips. He overheard the cafeteria staff whisper, "That's the man who called her useless." The words stung sharper than any reprimand. For years he had commanded buses full of children with barked orders, never once doubting his authority. Now that authority felt thin, almost laughable. At the end of his route that afternoon, he sat in the empty bus long after the last student had gone. The vinyl seats smelled faintly of crayons and sweat. He stared at the steering wheel, hearing his own voice replay. "Useless." It clanged against the memory of the medic's words. "You probably saved his life." He muttered into the silence, "I was wrong." The admission was bitter, but it was real. That evening, Maya's family gathered around the small TV in their living room. The national news was covering her story now. The anchor's voice was warm. "Out of Houston tonight, a story of courage. Meet Maya Bell, the little girl who reminded us all that heroes can come in the smallest packages." The screen showed her kneeling again, jewels hovering nearby, oranges scattered like fallen suns. Her mother reached for her hand. "Baby, they're talking about you like you're famous." Maya frowned. "I don't want to be famous, I just didn't want him to die." Her mother smiled gently. "That's what makes it matter." At the hospital, Mr. Thompson's recovery was steady. He spoke to reporters with a weak but grateful smile. "That little girl is the reason I'm here. I taught science for 30 years. I thought I'd seen every kind of miracle. Turns out the biggest one was waiting for me outside a grocery store." The clip went viral overnight. Comments flooded social media. "Bless that child. Where's the driver who called her useless? Shameful." Maya Bell for President 2040. The contrast between Maya's quiet bravery and Klein's cruelty became a talking point. Talk shows debated it. Editorials condemned it. Back on the bus, the power dynamic had shifted completely. When Klein barked his usual orders, the kids no longer jumped. They exchanged glances, some even smirking. The little boy with the apple stain whispered just loud enough, "She's not useless, she's a hero." Klein's face flushed. He gripped the wheel tighter, the word hero stinging worse than useless ever could. One afternoon, the school principal called Maya into her office. She entered nervously, clutching her backpack straps, but the principal's smile was warm. "Maya, the mayor's office reached out. They want to honor you at a city ceremony next week. A medal, a proclamation, the whole thing. How do you feel about that?" Maya swallowed hard. "Do I have to say a speech?" "Only if you want to," the principal said. "But you've already spoken louder than words." Naomi, waiting outside, squealed when she heard. "See, Maya? You're going to be honored by the whole city." Maya pressed her lips together. She wasn't sure she wanted ceremonies, but she thought of Mr. Thompson in the hospital, alive because she'd remembered what Aunt Nina had taught. Maybe this wasn't about her at all. Maybe it was about reminding people they weren't useless. That evening, Mr. Klein sat in his dark apartment watching the same news. The anchor's words stabbed. Even as Maya is honored, questions are being raised about the bus driver who belittled her. Parents are demanding accountability. His phone buzzed with messages from the school district. A formal inquiry, a request to appear before the board. He buried his face in his hands. For the first time in years, he felt not powerful, but powerless. "Respect," he muttered bitterly. "That's all they want, and I couldn't give it." On the night before the ceremony, Maya sat cross-legged on her bed, the folded tissue she'd used on the little boy still tucked in her backpack pocket. She pulled it out, smoothing the crumpled edges. She whispered, "Aunt Nina, you said respect isn't about size. It's about what you do with your hands. I think I understand now." Naomi peeked in. "Talking to Dad's sister again?" Maya smiled faintly. "Yeah, she knew what to do, and she taught me. That's why he's alive." Naomi hugged her tightly. then tomorrow isn't just about you. It's about everyone who believed you weren't useless. Maya exhaled, her chest lighter than it had felt in days. And so, as the city prepared to honor her, two stories unfolded in parallel. A little girl whose steady hands reminded the world that dignity has no age, and a driver who was finally realizing that respect, once denied, might be the hardest thing to earn back. The morning of the city ceremony broke bright and sharp, sunlight spilling over Houston's skyline like a fresh coat of paint. At home, Maya stood in front of the mirror while Naomi fussed over her hair. "Stop fidgeting," Naomi scolded gently, clipping back a stray curl. "You're going to be on stage. Everyone will see you." "I don't want everyone to see me," Maya mumbled, tugging at the hem of her dress. "I just want to go to school like normal." Her mother knelt in front of her, smoothing the fabric with careful hands. "Sweetheart, sometimes normal has to wait. Today the city says thank you. And they're not just thanking you, they're thanking Marcus Thompson, every soldier, every widow, every person who was ever told they were useless. You carry them with you." Maya's chest tightened, but she nodded. She slipped her small hand into her mother's and whispered, "Okay, I'll do it for them." City Hall Plaza was already buzzing by the time they arrived. A stage had been set with a backdrop of flags. Rows of chairs faced it, filled with neighbors, teachers, and reporters clutching microphones. The air thrummed with the low hum of cameras and chatter. When Maya stepped out of the car, the crowd rippled with applause. People held signs that read, "Respect her," and "Heroes come small too." Children waved hand-drawn posters of a girl kneeling beside scattered oranges. Maya's cheeks burned as she walked to the front, clutching her backpack like armor. On stage, the mayor adjusted the microphone. "We gathered today not to celebrate a politician or a celebrity, but a child who showed more courage in a moment than many adults show in a lifetime." Maya Bell kept a man alive with nothing but her hands, her memory, and her refusal to give up. She was called useless, but she proved for all of us that no one who chooses respect in action is ever useless. The applause was thunderous. Maya lowered her head, wishing she could hide, but also feeling a warmth bloom in her chest. The mayor gestured for her to step forward. Her mother nudged her gently. Maya walked to the podium, the crowd roaring. A medal was placed around her neck, glinting in the sunlight. The crowd quieted as if expecting a speech. Maya's palms were damp. She glanced at Naomi, who mouthed, "Say what's true." Maya leaned toward the microphone. Her voice shook at first, but steadied as she spoke. "I didn't save Mr. Thompson because I'm special. I saved him because Aunt Nina taught me what to do. Because I remembered. Anyone can learn. Anyone can help." And to the people who think kids can't make a difference, her eyes flicked briefly toward the crowd, and though she didn't see Mr. Klein, the words carried to him anyway, "We can." Respect isn't about age, it's about what you do with your hands and your heart. The silence broke into roaring applause. Cameras flashed. The chant rose, "Respect, respect." Across the city, televisions replayed her words. Anchors called it the speech of a child who reminded us of our duty. Editorials praised her for turning an insult into a lesson for the nation. Meanwhile, Rick Klein sat in the back row of the ceremony, cap pulled low. He hadn't intended to come, but something gnawed at him until he found himself there. He listened as the mayor called her courageous, as the crowd chanted her name. The medal glinted around her neck like a judgment, a mirror held up to him. His jaw tightened when she spoke of kids making a difference. The words weren't aimed at him directly, but they pierced anyway. When the crowd rose in ovation, he stayed seated, hands clamped to his knees. For the first time in his career, applause wasn't his to share in. It was his reminder of what he had taken away, and what she had reclaimed. After the ceremony, Maya's family was swarmed by reporters. One asked, "Maya, do you have anything to say to the bus driver who called you useless?" Her mother started to intervene, but Maya shook her head. She answered simply, "I'd say he was wrong, but I'd also say, maybe he just forgot what respect looks like." Her words were carried on the evening news, framed not as bitterness, but as grace. That night at home, Maya placed the medal in her drawer instead of leaving it out. She told Naomi, "It's not about the medal. It's about Mr. Thompson breathing." Naomi hugged her, "And about you proving the world wrong." In his small apartment, Klein sat watching the same broadcast. Maya's answer replayed. "Maybe he just forgot what respect looks like." He buried his face in his hands. "Forgot," he muttered. "She gave me more grace than I deserve." For the first time, he wondered if redemption was possible, not through excuses, but through humility. Angela Carter once told the nation respect was duty. Now Maya Bell had shown it with her hands, and even those who had denied respect felt its weight pressing them toward change. The city ceremony might have ended, but its echoes spread far beyond Houston. Local papers ran the headline, "Child Hero Reminds City of Respect." National outlets framed it as a story of dignity and courage. Talk shows debated what it meant for schools to start teaching CPR to children. Everywhere, people used Maya Bell's name as shorthand for bravery. At school, the attention only grew. Teachers pulled her aside between classes. Students wanted to sit with her at lunch. Even parents she didn't know approached her mother in the pickup line to say, "Your daughter inspired us." Maya felt the weight of all the eyes. She told Naomi one night, "I didn't do it to be special. I just didn't want him to die." Naomi hugged her and whispered, "That's what makes it special." Meanwhile, in a hospital room still smelling faintly of antiseptic, Mr. Marcus Thompson sat upright for the first time since collapsing. His chest rose with shallow but steady breaths, each one a reminder of how close he had come to silence. His wife sat beside him, her hands trembling around his. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. "You didn't," he rasped. "Because of her." A nurse entered with a smile. "You have visitors, Mr. Thompson, a family waiting outside." Mr. Thompson's eyes brightened. "Bring them in, please." Minutes later, Maya stepped hesitantly into the room, her mother and Naomi behind her. She clutched her backpack straps like a lifeline, her medal tucked away in a drawer at home. Mr. Thompson's face lit up when he saw her. "You," he said, his voice still hoarse. "My hero." Maya shook her head quickly. "No, sir. I just remembered what my aunt taught me." He reached for her hand. His grip was weak, but the warmth was strong. "Do you know how many students I taught over 30 years? Hundreds, maybe thousands. And yet, in one moment, you became my teacher. You taught me life is never useless when there are hands willing to help." Tears burned Maya's eyes. She squeezed his hand carefully. "I'm glad you're here." His wife bent down and hugged Maya tightly. "We'll never forget you," she whispered. The hospital staff stood by quietly, their own eyes shining. They knew they were witnessing something rare, not just survival, but gratitude stitched between generations. Back at school, the whispers about Mr. Klein had grown too loud to ignore. Parents flooded the administration with complaints. How could he call her useless? How do we trust someone like that with our children? One afternoon, Klein was summoned to the district office. He sat across from a panel of stern administrators. "Mr. Klein," the superintendent began, "we have heard from parents, students, and staff. We've seen the video. We've read the reports. Do you deny calling Maya Bell useless during a life-threatening emergency?" Klein's throat tightened. For a moment, he considered deflecting, as he had always done. But the memory of the medal around Maya's neck, the crowd chanting respect, and her own words, "Maybe he just forgot what respect looks like," echoed too loudly. He lowered his head. "No, I don't deny it. I said it. I was wrong." "Wrong is an understatement," one administrator snapped. "You attempted to stop a child from saving a life. Do you understand the gravity of that?" Klein swallowed hard. "I do, and I can't take it back. All I can do is admit it and try to live differently from here." The panel exchanged glances. The superintendent sighed. "Your employment is under review. In the meantime, you're suspended." Klein nodded slowly. For the first time, he didn't argue. He simply accepted. That evening, Maya's family gathered around the dinner table. Their mother brought out fried chicken and collard greens, her way of celebrating survival. Naomi scrolled through her phone, beaming. "Look at this, Maya. The hashtag not useless is trending again. People everywhere are posting stories of kids helping their communities. It's like you started something." Maya poked at her plate, her cheeks hot. "I didn't start anything. I just did what needed to be done." Her mother leaned across the table. "That's the lesson, baby. Respect doesn't wait for someone older, richer, or louder. Respect is what you do when it's needed." Naomi grinned. "And you did it." Across town, Klein sat alone in his dark apartment, the suspension letter on the table. He watched the evening news again. This time, a clip of Maya visiting Mr. Thompson in the hospital. The man's words cut through him. "You taught me life is never useless." Klein whispered bitterly, "And I tried to stop it." For the first time in years, he didn't feel angry at the world. He felt ashamed of himself. He whispered again, quieter this time, "Maybe respect is something I can still learn." In the days that followed, Maya's life shifted again. Letters poured in from strangers across the country, teachers, veterans, widows, children. One card, written in careful block letters, read, "I'm 10. I saw you on TV. I thought I was useless too. Not anymore." Maya read it twice, her heart swelling. She tucked it into her backpack alongside the crumpled tissue from the bus. Two reminders that respect lived not in medals, but in hands willing to help. By the end of the week, Maya's story had traveled farther than anyone expected. It wasn't just Houston anymore. It was Dallas, Chicago, New York. News anchors repeated her words. Respect isn't about age. It's about what you do with your hands and your heart. Teachers replayed the clip for their students. Within BAS, school boards across the country began talking about CPR training for children. A headline on the evening news read, "From One Girl's Courage, a National Campaign." At her own school, the principal called an assembly. The gym was packed with students sitting cross-legged on the floor, the air buzzing with anticipation. When Maya walked in with her class, kids clapped, some even cheering. She blushed and looked down at her shoes. The principal raised a hand. "Today we begin something new. Once a week, our students will practice basic emergency skills, calling 911, learning CPR. We do this because Maya reminded us that children are never useless. They are powerful." The applause thundered. Maya felt her cheeks burn, but a small, proud smile tugged at her lips. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Mr. Thompson's recovery grew stronger every day. He walked short laps in the hallway, IV stand rattling beside him, determined to build back strength. But his mind never left the little girl who had saved him. "This isn't just about survival," he told a nurse. "This is about passing on what she taught me. I need to do something for her." When he was discharged, he asked his wife to buy a simple wooden box and paint it blue, the same color as the sky he saw when he first opened his eyes after CPR. Inside, he placed a stack of blank notebooks. On the lid, in gold paint, he wrote, "The Respect Journals." He planned to give the first to Maya, so she remembers that her story isn't just hers, it belongs to everyone she inspires. Back at school, Maya's daily life was a strange mix of normal and extraordinary. She still did math homework, still shared snacks at lunch, still worried about tests, but kids looked at her differently now. Some with admiration, some with envy. At recess, a girl asked, "What's it like to be a hero?" Maya shrugged. "It's like being tired and scared and doing it anyway." The girl blinked, then whispered, "I hope I could do that too." Maya smiled softly. "You can." For Rick Klein, the days dragged heavy. Suspended from his route, he spent long hours walking the city streets. Everywhere he went, reminders of Maya stared back at him. Posters in school windows, headlines at newsstands, murals painted on brick walls showing her kneeling beside the fallen man, oranges glowing like scattered suns. He couldn't escape the contrast, her courage and his cruelty. One afternoon, he passed a group of students practicing chest compressions on a training dummy outside the community center. Their teacher reminded them, "Push hard, push steady. Don't be afraid to be loud for the right reasons." Klein froze. Those words had been Maya's. The children were chanting them like a pledge. He muttered, "She's teaching the whole city, and I told her to stop." The shame was suffocating. Yet beneath it stirred something he hadn't felt in years, the faint, painful tug of wanting to change. At home, Maya's family was visited by Mr. Thompson and his wife. They carried the blue wooden box. Mr. Thompson's eyes shone as he handed it to Maya. "This is for you," he said. "The first Respect Journal. Inside are blank pages. I want you to write what you felt, what you learned, what you believe. Because one day, other children will read it, and they'll remember they're never useless." Maya ran her hand over the gold letters. She looked up, eyes wide. "I don't know what to write." Mr. Thompson smiled. "Start with the truth. That's all any of us can do." Her mother's voice broke with pride. "Baby, your story is already bigger than us, but it's still yours to tell." That night, Maya sat at her desk with the journal open. She wrote carefully on the first page, "I was scared, but I counted. And my hands remembered what I had been taught. Respect is not about size, it is about action, and anyone can act." She paused, staring at the words, then added, "I will never forget the sound of him breathing again. That sound is proof that respect is life." Across town, Rick Klein sat at the veterans' circle, though he was no veteran himself. He listened as others spoke of mistakes, of redemption, of practice. When it was his turn, he stood slowly. "I was the bus driver," he admitted. "The one who called her useless. I told her to stop when she was saving a man's life. I've lived with that shame every day since. I don't ask for forgiveness. I only ask for the chance to learn respect the way she already knows it." The room stayed silent. Then one veteran finally nodded. "Respect isn't in words, Klein. It's in the next choice you make. Keep making better ones." For the first time, Klein felt not absolution, but direction. Back in her room, Maya closed the journal, her first entry finished. She placed it carefully beside her bed. Naomi peeked in. "What did you write?" Maya smiled faintly. "The truth, that anyone can make a difference." Naomi hugged her. "Then that's enough." And as Maya drifted to sleep, the city outside seemed a little quieter, a little kinder. Each candle, each mural, each journal entry, another reminder that respect had become not a chant, not a headline, but a way of life. Within a month, Maya's story had sparked something larger than her family, larger than Houston. News outlets announced that the Department of Education was considering a pilot program, basic CPR and emergency training in elementary schools. The proposal carried a name that made Maya's cheeks burn when she heard it: the Bell Initiative. Her principal called her into the office one afternoon. "Maya, a team from the state is visiting next week. They want to see how we could teach students what you already know." Maya shifted nervously in her seat. "But I'm not a teacher," the principal smiled. "Maybe not, but you're the reason they're learning." At the community center that weekend, families gathered for the first free CPR workshop inspired by Maya's actions. Children practiced chest compressions on plastic dummies, while instructors repeated words that had become a mantra. Push hard, push steady. Don't be afraid to be loud for the right reasons. Angela Carter's voice had once carried those words to courthouses and Congress. Now they lived in the mouths of 10-year-olds thanks to Maya Bell. Maya sat cross-legged on the floor, notebook balanced on her lap, scribbling observations for her respect journal. She wrote, "They don't look useless, they look ready." Meanwhile, Mr. Marcus Thompson had been discharged from the hospital and was eager to return to his old life. Though retired from teaching, he still tutored neighborhood kids in science. The first day he returned to his little study room at the library, students gathered around, peppering him with questions. "Mr. Thompson, is it true she saved you?" one boy asked. Mr. Thompson chuckled, his chest still sore but strong. "Yes, it's true, and it's the greatest lesson I've ever received. That respect and courage can come from anyone, no matter their age." He pointed to the stack of notebooks he'd brought, the respect journals he planned to distribute. "Each of you will write your own story of respect, because respect doesn't grow in speeches, it grows in practice." The children nodded, scribbling furiously, as though eager to join a legacy bigger than themselves. For Rick Klein, the weight of his choices only grew heavier. News of the Bell Initiative reached him too, flashing across TV screens in diners and gas stations. Each headline was a reminder of what he had tried to stop. One afternoon, as he walked through downtown Houston, he stumbled upon a mural freshly painted across a brick wall. It showed Maya kneeling beside the man, oranges scattered around like glowing suns, her hands steady on his chest. Above, in bold white letters, it read, "Not useless." Klein froze. Passers-by stopped to admire the mural, some snapping photos, others bowing their heads in silent respect. He muttered under his breath, "She's on their walls, and I'm in their whispers." That night at the Veterans Circle, he spoke again. "Everywhere I go, I see her face painted larger than life. She's the reminder of what I wasn't. I don't know if I'll ever escape it." The facilitator studied him. "You don't escape shame, Klein. You work through it. Respect isn't about being celebrated. It's about the small choices when no one claps." Klein nodded, his throat tight. For the first time, he believed it. At school, Maya's teachers encouraged her to share her story with classmates. In the library, she stood nervously in front of rows of students. "I didn't think. I just remembered. Anyone can learn what I did, and if you ever have the chance, don't be afraid to try. You might be the reason someone breathes again." The children listened wide-eyed. When she finished, they erupted into applause. Maya blushed, clutching her journal. That night she wrote, "It's not about me, it's about the breath that came back. It's about proving respect is practice, not just words." Across the nation, communities embraced the message. Churches held Respect Sundays. Schools created murals of folded flags and open hands. Parents told their children Maya's story as a bedtime lesson. Editorials wrote, From a single act of courage, America remembered what respect looks like. But not everyone was content to simply celebrate. A town hall was scheduled in Houston to discuss the school district's handling of the incident, including the driver who had mocked Maya. Reporters circled the story, eager to see what would happen. The night of the meeting, the auditorium filled with parents, teachers, and students. On stage sat administrators and, reluctantly, Rick Klein. Whispers swirled as he took his seat. That's him. He told her she was useless. And she saved a man's life anyway. Klein's face burned. For the first time in his life, he wasn't in control. He was on trial before his community. When the superintendent called for comments, parents spoke first. One mother's voice trembled with fury. How could any adult speak that way to a child? How could you stop her when she was doing the right thing? Applause shook the room. Klein swallowed hard. When it was his turn, he stood slowly. I don't have excuses. I said those words. I tried to stop her, and she proved me wrong. Every headline, every mural, every chant of respect is proof of what I failed to be. The room went silent. He continued, I can't undo that day. I can only admit it and live differently from now on. If you never forgive me, I'll understand. But I won't stop trying to earn respect. Not for applause, not for headlines, but because it's the right thing. For a long moment, the room stayed quiet. Then, surprisingly, a single voice, Mr. Thompson's, frail but firm, rose from the audience. You spoke wrong, Klein, but tonight at least you spoke true. Respect is owed and respect is practiced. Don't forget it again. The applause that followed wasn't for Klein. It was for the reminder that even the fallen could try to rise. That night, Maya sat on her bed with her respect journal open. She wrote, Respect is bigger than medals or murals. It's in the courage to admit when you were wrong and the courage to do what's right even when you're small. Respect is the choice we keep making. She closed the notebook, placed it on her nightstand, and whispered, That's the truth. In the weeks following the town hall, the ripple of Maya's actions had grown into waves strong enough to reach Washington. The Bell Initiative was no longer a local idea. It was on the floor of state legislatures, debated in news columns, and even mentioned during nightly national broadcasts. If a 9-year-old can save a life, one anchor declared, then every child deserves the chance to learn the same skills. Across the country, schools began adopting pilot programs for CPR training. Children knelt over mannequins in gymnasiums, their small hands pressing to the rhythm of songs chosen to teach the right pace. Teachers echoed the mantra that had started with Aunt Nina. Push hard, push steady, don't be afraid to be loud for the right reasons. Maya watched the news with wide eyes. They're all learning, she whispered. Everywhere. Her mother hugged her. Because of you, baby. Because you showed them it's possible. But Maya shook her head. Because Mr. Thompson lived. That's the proof they needed. At the library, Mr. Thompson had wasted no time turning his gratitude into purpose. His small tutoring room became a hub of eager faces. He stacked the respect journals on a shelf, handing one to every student who entered. Write what you believe respect looks like, he told them. It doesn't have to be long, just true. Children filled the pages with drawings, poems, and stories, helping their mothers with groceries, standing up for a classmate, practicing chest compressions on their pillows at night. Each entry, Mr. Thompson insisted, was as valuable as the one that came before. One afternoon, he invited Maya to visit. When she stepped into the room, the children applauded. Mr. Thompson beamed. Class, this is the girl who taught me that no one is useless. Maya flushed scarlet. I didn't teach anything. I just remembered. Mr. Thompson shook his head gently. Sometimes remembering is the greatest lesson. He handed her one of the journals, filled by a boy named Daniel. On the page, he had drawn a picture of Maya kneeling by a man surrounded by oranges. Beneath it, he had written in clumsy block letters, Respect is saving, not shouting. Maya traced the words with her finger, her eyes stinging. That's beautiful. It's yours to keep, Mr. Thompson said, so you remember what you started. Meanwhile, Rick Klein wrestled with his own place in the story. His suspension still hung over him, and whispers followed wherever he went. In diners, parents eyed him coldly. In parks, children pointed. He carried the weight like a stone. One Saturday, he stood outside the community center, unsure whether to enter. Through the glass doors, he could see families gathered for another CPR workshop, children pressing their palms into dummies while instructors cheered them on. Klein almost turned away, but a little voice inside told him, "You stopped once. Don't walk away again." He stepped inside quietly, hovering at the back. Parents stiffened when they noticed him, but no one asked him to leave. He listened as the instructor repeated Maya's mantra. When the session ended, he approached hesitantly. "I know I'm not welcome," he said, his voice low, "but if you need someone to stack chairs, mop the floor, anything, I'd like to help." The instructor studied him for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. "Respect is in practice, not apologies. If you want to help, then help." For the next hour, Klein worked silently, folding chairs, sweeping crumbs, wiping tables. No applause, no recognition, just labor. For the first time in months, his chest felt lighter. At home that night, Maya wrote in her respect journal, "Respect is not about medals or ceremonies. It's about what you do when no one is clapping." Today, I saw Mr. Thompson's students write their truths. Maybe respect will live longer than I thought. Maybe it will outgrow me. I hope it does. The following week, a letter arrived at Maya's school. It bore the seal of the governor's office. Her teacher read it aloud to the class. To Maya Bell, your courage has inspired not only your city, but your entire state. Because of you, we are implementing the Bell Initiative in every public school. Children will learn, as you did, that respect is not optional, it is duty. Thank you for reminding us what one small voice can do. The class erupted in cheers. Jules threw her arms around Maya. The little boy with the apple stain shouted, "She saved him and the rest of us." Maya hid her face in her hands, overwhelmed, but beneath the embarrassment, pride glowed warm. Across town, Klein watched the same announcement on television. The governor's words cut deep. He whispered, "She changed the state, and I tried to stop her." But instead of bitterness, the words fueled a resolve. He pulled out a notebook and wrote his first real entry. Respect is learning from those you underestimated. Respect is not quitting, even when you're ashamed. Respect is work, daily and unseen. He closed the notebook and for the first time in months, felt like he had taken a step forward. That night, Maya sat on her porch with her family. The cicadas hummed, the air heavy with late summer warmth. She traced the medal around her neck but left it tucked under her shirt. Her mother asked softly, "Do you realize what you've done, Maya?" She looked up at the stars. "I didn't do it alone. Aunt Nina taught me. Mr. Thompson trusted me. Jules stood by me. And now the kids are learning everywhere. Respect isn't mine. It belongs to all of us." Naomi leaned against her shoulder. "Still, you reminded us." Maya smiled, small but certain. "And now they'll remember." Autumn settled over Houston with crisp mornings and skies clear as glass. The cicadas had gone quiet, replaced by the rustle of dry leaves tumbling down the sidewalks. But in Maya Bell's life, the noise had only grown louder. What started as a viral video was now a full-fledged movement. The governor's office announced a statewide conference on emergency preparedness and youth empowerment. At its center would be the girl who reminded the nation that courage has no age. The letter arrived on heavy paper with a gold seal. Her teacher read it to the class. "Maya Bell, you are invited to be recognized at the state capitol for your extraordinary courage and your role in inspiring the Bell Initiative. You will receive the Governor's Medal of Civic Honor, one of the highest recognitions given to a citizen." The class erupted into cheers. Jules clapped so hard her palms turned red. The little boy with the apple stain shouted, "She's going to the Capitol!" Maya hid her face in her hands, her cheeks blazing. "Do I have to make another speech?" she groaned later to Naomi. Naomi grinned. "Maybe, but remember, you don't have to say much, just the truth. That's all people want from you." The day of the ceremony, the Capitol steps were crowded with families, veterans, teachers, and children from across the state. The air buzzed with anticipation, flags rippling in the brisk breeze. Reporters lined the walkway, cameras trained on the small figure approaching the stage with her mother and sister. When Maya appeared, the applause rolled like thunder. People held signs reading "Not useless" and "Respect is duty." On stage, the governor adjusted the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we honor a child who reminded us all what responsibility looks like." Maya Bell did not wait for someone older or stronger to act. She did what respect demanded in the moment it was needed. Because of her, countless lives may be saved in the future. Today, we present her with the Governor's Medal of Civic Honor. The medal was placed around her neck, heavier than the city's award, gleaming in the sunlight. The governor invited Mr. Thompson to speak next. The retired science teacher, still recovering but standing tall, approached the podium. His voice trembled with emotion. I was the man lying on that sidewalk. My world was ending, but it was saved by a little girl who refused to believe she was useless. Maya gave me back my life, and now she gives all of us a lesson. Respect doesn't come from age or authority. It comes from choosing to act. The crowd rose to their feet, cheering. Maya's eyes filled with tears. She whispered to herself, "He's alive. That's all that matters." Among the crowd, almost hidden in the back, stood Rick Klein. He wore no uniform now, just a plain jacket and cap pulled low. He hadn't been invited, but he came anyway, compelled by something he couldn't name. When Maya walked across the stage, metal glinting, the chants of respect, respect, rising all around, Klein felt the words burn in his chest. He remembered shouting useless in that same moment a year ago, remembered the stillness of the man's body, remembered nearly stopping the act that saved him. He whispered to himself, "That word will never pass my lips again." After the ceremony, families swarmed the steps, snapping photos and chanting Maya's name. Somewhere in the crowd, Klein lingered, unsure whether to leave or stay. Then, unexpectedly, Mr. Thompson spotted him. Their eyes locked. For a moment, Klein braced for anger, for the harsh rebuke he deserved. Instead, Mr. Thompson walked over slowly, leaning on his cane. He didn't smile, but his gaze was steady. "You said the wrong thing at the worst moment, but you're here. That means something. Don't waste it." Klein bowed his head, words catching in his throat. "I won't." It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't rejection either. That evening, back home, Maya sat on the porch with her respect journal open. Naomi leaned over her shoulder. "What are you writing this time?" Maya scribbled carefully. "Today they gave me a medal, but I don't think medals matter. What matters is that Mr. Thompson stood, breathing and speaking. What matters is that kids are learning CPR everywhere now. Respect isn't shiny metal. It's steady hands and steady hearts." She closed the journal, her chest lighter. Across town, Klein sat at his small kitchen table. He pulled out his own notebook, the one he had started after the town hall. He wrote, "Respect is not waiting to be celebrated. Respect is doing the work quietly, even if no one ever notices." He closed it, exhaling deeply. For the first time, he felt he might truly start over. On the Capitol steps, long after the crowd had gone, the echo of the chant lingered. Respect, respect. And in that echo, Maya Bell's lesson lived on, not as a headline, not as a medal, but as a new truth the state had claimed as its own. The Capitol ceremony had ended, but the ripples only widened. Maya's name appeared in national papers, on morning talk shows, and across social media, not just as the girl who saved Mr. Thompson, but as the spark for a national conversation. In Washington, lawmakers began drafting a proposal to expand the Bell Initiative nationwide. Editorials urged quick passage. "One child's courage has revealed a gap in our preparedness. Let's close it together." At school, Maya noticed the difference immediately. New CPR mannequins arrived in the gym. Teachers set aside time for training. Posters lined the halls with bold letters. Respect is action. During one session, Maya knelt beside her classmates as they practiced compressions. Her teacher smiled at her. "Maya, would you like to lead this part?" Maya hesitated, then nodded. She placed her palms firmly on the dummy's chest and counted aloud. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rhythm spread across the room as dozens of small hands followed hers. The sound of children's voices counting in unison filled the gym, echoing like a new kind of pledge. Maya felt her chest swell. This was bigger than one man saved on a sidewalk. This was a generation learning respect as skill, not slogan. Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson returned to the library for his tutoring sessions. Parents insisted their children attend. He began each lesson the same way, by holding up a respect journal. "Before science, before numbers, before anything," he told them, "you must understand this. Respect is not an idea, it's what you do." Maya taught us that. She's your age, and she proved it. The children nodded, scribbling entries in their journals, helping younger siblings with homework, picking up trash in the park, checking on grandparents. Small acts, but stitched together, they formed the fabric of respect. One boy raised his hand. "Mr. Thompson, will Maya ever come teach us?" Mr. Thompson chuckled. "She already has." "You're here, aren't you?" Rick Klein, however, lived in the shadow of whispers. Though his suspension remained, He volunteered at the community center every week. He stacked chairs, swept floors, and stayed long after families had gone. Some still shot him sharp looks, others ignored him. But one Saturday, as he scrubbed a table, a boy approached shyly. It was Daniel, the child who had once drawn Maya in his respect journal. "My mom says you're the driver who was mean," Daniel said bluntly. Klein swallowed. "She's right. I was mean. Worse than mean." Daniel tilted his head. "But you're cleaning here now." "Yes," Klein said softly, "because respect isn't in words, it's in work. I can't take back what I did, but I can try to be better." Daniel thought for a moment, then handed him a crumpled page from his journal. On it, a stick figure bent over a table with the word respect written above. "That's you," Daniel said. "If you keep trying." Klein's throat tightened. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was the first thread of something like acceptance. Back at home, Maya's family tried to carve out normal life. Her mother insisted she still wash dishes and finish homework, even with medals gleaming in her drawer. "Respect at home matters just as much as on TV," she said. Naomi teased her constantly. "You know, you're basically famous now. Want me to start calling you Madam Hero?" Maya rolled her eyes. "If you do, I'm writing in my journal that you're the useless one." They both burst into laughter, the kind that lightened the heaviness of the last few months. That week, Maya received an invitation from Washington itself. A televised panel on youth preparedness wanted her as a guest. Her mother hesitated, worried about the pressure, but Maya surprised her. "I think I want to go," Maya said quietly. "Not to be on TV, but because kids everywhere should know they can learn. They shouldn't wait until someone falls." Her mother hugged her tightly. "That's my girl." On the day of the panel, Maya sat nervously beneath the studio lights, medal tucked under her sweater. Beside her sat lawmakers, doctors, and educators. The moderator leaned forward. "Maya, what do you think adults need to understand about children in emergencies?" Maya took a breath, remembering Aunt Nina's lessons. "That we're not useless, we can learn, we can act. Respect is listening to kids and trusting them when it matters." The audience erupted in applause. The cameras carried her words into living rooms across America. Back in Houston, Klein watched the broadcast alone. Maya's words cut through him. He whispered, "She's right. I didn't listen. I didn't trust. And I nearly cost a man his life." But instead of sinking deeper into shame, he picked up his notebook. He wrote, "Respect is listening, even when you think you know better. Especially then." That night, Maya opened her own journal. She wrote, "Today I spoke in Washington. But the truth is, respect doesn't live in cameras. It lives in what we do when the world isn't watching. I hope people remember that." She closed the book, set it by her bed, and whispered, "That's enough for today." By winter, the Bell Initiative had grown from a state campaign into a national program. Districts from coast to coast rolled out CPR and emergency training in elementary schools. News segments showed classrooms full of children pressing their palms into mannequins, their voices counting in unison. Maya watched one of those clips on television, her knees tucked to her chest on the couch. The reporter's voice rang clear. "From tragedy narrowly avoided, America has embraced a new kind of education. Children across the nation are proving what Maya Bell taught us, that no one is useless when they choose to act." Her mother squeezed her shoulder. "Do you see this? They're all learning because of you." Maya shook her head softly. "Because of Mr. Thompson. If he hadn't survived, nobody would have listened." Naomi grinned. "Still, you gave them the proof." Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson had returned fully to health and found himself busier than ever. The library's small tutoring room could no longer hold the flood of children and parents who came to hear him speak. So, the city converted an old community hall into what they called the Respect Classroom. The walls were painted with murals, Maya kneeling on the grass, a pair of hands pressing together, oranges scattered like tiny suns. Above the doorway hung bold letters, "Respect is action." Each week, Mr. Thompson handed out respect journals to new students. "Write what respect looks like in your life," he told them. "It might be helping your mother with dishes, standing up for a friend, or learning how to save a life. No action is too small." The journals filled quickly with colorful drawings and earnest words. Parents left them open on shelves at home, proud reminders of the lesson that had outgrown a single sidewalk moment. One evening, as Maya visited, Mr. Thompson held up one of the journals. "These," he said, "are your legacy. You planted the seed. Now look at the garden." Maya blushed, running her hand across the painted wall. It doesn't feel like mine. It feels like everyone's. Mr. Thompson smiled. That's exactly right. Across town, Rick Klein continued his quiet work. Though still suspended, he was allowed to volunteer at workshops. He set up chairs, fetched water, cleaned up afterward. At first, people avoided him, whispers trailing wherever he walked. But slowly, things shifted. Parents noticed he never missed a session. Children saw him quietly helping them line up dummies or offering wipes for their hands. He never tried to lead. He simply worked. One Saturday, as the workshop ended, the instructor turned to the crowd. Let's thank our volunteers. To Klein's surprise, scattered claps included him. It wasn't loud, it wasn't unanimous, but it was real. He stood frozen, throat tight. For the first time in a long while, the sound of applause didn't sting. It gave him hope. That night, he wrote in his notebook, "Respect isn't earned in one day. It's rebuilt in every small task, brick by brick." At school, Maya faced a different challenge, living with the attention. Some kids adored her, others whispered jealously. One girl sneered, "Just because you saved someone doesn't mean you're better than us." Maya froze, the words cutting deeper than she expected. That night, she wrote in her journal, "Respect is remembering you're not above anyone. Respect is staying humble, even when the world lifts you up." The next day, she approached the girl at recess. "You're right," Maya said softly. "I'm not better. I was just there that day. You might be there another day, and you'll know what to do too." The girl's expression softened. "You really think so?" "I know so." As the Bell Initiative spread, Washington announced a national summit on youth and respect. Leaders, teachers, and students from across the country would gather. And among the speakers listed, one name stood in bold: Maya Bell. When the invitation arrived, Maya groaned. "Another speech?" Naomi teased. "Come on, Madam Hero, it's practically your job now." Her mother smiled gently. "Just speak the truth, baby. That's all anyone ever wants from you." The night before the summit, Maya sat with her respect journal open, pencil hovering. She thought of Mr. Thompson breathing again, of children writing in their journals, of Klein stacking chairs in silence. She wrote, "Respect isn't a moment, it's a practice. It's not a medal or a speech, it's what you choose when no one claps. That's the truth I'll carry tomorrow." She closed the journal, placed it by her bed, and whispered, "That's enough." The National Summit on Youth Preparedness and Respect took place in Washington, D.C., in a grand hall where the ceilings arched like a cathedral and flags from every state lined the walls. For days leading up to it, Maya felt her stomach twist whenever she thought about standing on that stage. Her mother noticed her fidgeting in the hotel room the night before. "Nervous?" she asked, smoothing Maya's dress for the morning. Maya nodded. "What if I mess up? What if people think I don't deserve to be here?" Her mother cupped her cheeks. "You deserve it because you live the truth. Don't try to be perfect, Maya. Just be honest." Naomi chimed in with a grin. "Besides, you're already the hero in this room. The rest of them are just catching up." Maya laughed despite herself. The next morning, the hall buzzed with energy. Reporters whispered into microphones. Rows of students, teachers, doctors, and lawmakers filled the seats. On stage, polished speakers in suits delivered prepared remarks about policy and funding. But the moment everyone waited for was different. When Maya's name was announced, the applause was immediate and heartfelt. She walked onto the stage slowly, clutching her respect journal in both hands, medal tucked under her sweater. The bright lights made her blink, but she took a deep breath, hearing Aunt Nina's voice in her memory. "Don't be afraid to be loud for the right reasons." She stepped to the microphone. Her voice was small at first, but steady. "I'm not here because I'm special," she began. "I'm here because I remembered. My aunt taught me what to do if someone stopped breathing. And when it happened, I did it. That's all." The room was so quiet that her words seemed to stretch into every corner. Adults sometimes think kids can't make a difference, but we can. Respect isn't about size or age. It's about what you do when someone needs you. It's about using your hands and your heart, even when you're scared. She held up her journal. "This is my respect journal. I write in it after each day to remind myself what respect looks like in real life. Not on TV, not in medals, but in small choices, like helping a classmate or listening when someone feels invisible. You don't have to wait until someone is lying on the ground to show respect. You can start now, every day." Her voice grew stronger. "Respect is not useless. Respect is life. For a moment, silence held. Then the entire hall erupted in applause, the sound rising like thunder. Students stood, clapping, some chanting her name. Even lawmakers wiped their eyes. Maya stepped back, cheeks burning, but a small smile tugged at her lips. She had told the truth, and the truth had landed. In the audience, Mr. Thompson dabbed at his eyes with a handkerchief. "She's teaching the nation," he whispered to his wife. "She's doing what I always dreamed my students could do, become teachers themselves." He turned to the children sitting near him, holding up his own respect journal. "You see, that's the lesson. Write your truths, share them. Respect grows when it's spoken." The children nodded, scribbling eagerly, inspired not just by Maya but by the idea that they too could carry respect forward. Toward the back of the hall sat Rick Klein. He hadn't told anyone he was coming. He kept his cap low, his hands folded tightly. Every word Maya spoke felt like a needle of memory, reminding him of the day he had tried to silence her. When the applause broke out, he didn't clap at first, but slowly his hands came together. The sound was faint, lost in the roar, but for him, it was an act of defiance against the man he used to be. After the session ended, people streamed into the lobby. Klein lingered near the exit, ready to slip away. But then something unexpected happened. A father approached him, holding his son's hand. "You're Klein, aren't you?" the man asked. Klein stiffened, waiting for anger. "Yes," he admitted. The father's eyes were hard, but his voice was calm. "What you did was wrong, but I heard you've been helping at the community center. Keep doing it. Don't stop. Because my son deserves a world where even people who mess up can change." The boy looked up at him and whispered, "Respect is practice." Klein's throat tightened. He nodded once, unable to speak. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was the first thread of acceptance he had felt in public. That night, back at the hotel, Maya opened her respect journal. She wrote, "Today I spoke at the summit. I was afraid. But I remembered that respect is not about being fearless. It's about doing the right thing even when you're afraid. I saw people listening. Maybe they'll carry it forward. That's all I want." She closed the journal, slipped it under her pillow, and whispered into the quiet, "That's enough for today." Across the city, in his small apartment, Klein opened his own notebook. He wrote, "Respect is clapping when you used to stay silent. Respect is showing up even when no one asked. Respect is choosing again, every day." He closed the book and for the first time in years felt that the road ahead, though long, was one he could keep walking. When Maya returned home from Washington, the world outside still seemed loud with her name. Headlines, broadcasts, even posters in store windows. But her bedroom was the same. A soft quilt on her bed, a pile of homework waiting on her desk, and the respect journal sitting where she'd left it. Her mother kissed her forehead that night. "You did something powerful, Maya. But remember, power doesn't mean you stop being yourself. Tomorrow you go back to school, back to chores, back to ordinary." Maya exhaled in relief. "Good. I like ordinary," Naomi teased, "until someone else faints in the street. Then we know who's going to jump in first." Maya rolled her eyes but laughed. "Only if I have to." At school the next morning, she walked through the halls with her backpack tugging at her shoulders. Kids stared, whispering again. But this time the looks were softer. They didn't just see her as a hero, they saw her as proof. In the gym, the new CPR mannequins had arrived. Classes rotated through, students kneeling on mats, practicing compressions to the beat of music. Teachers reminded them, "Push steady, push hard, don't be afraid to be loud for the right reasons." As Maya joined her group, a second grader whispered, "Show us how you did it." Maya hesitated, then placed her hands carefully on the dummy. "Like this. Arms straight, count out loud." The room filled with voices chanting numbers. For the first time, Maya realized the chant didn't need to come from her alone. It lived in everyone now. Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson was busier than he'd ever been. His respect classroom overflowed with students. Local news cameras filmed him handing out journals, explaining how small acts built bigger change. "Respect isn't just saving lives," he told one reporter. "It's teaching children they matter before anyone dares call them useless." One afternoon, Maya visited again. She watched as younger kids filled their notebooks with drawings and stories. Mr. Thompson handed her a stack. "These are yours to read. Proof that respect has taken root." Maya flipped through them, her eyes stinging. A drawing of a girl helping her grandmother carry groceries. A story about a boy sharing lunch with a classmate who forgot theirs. Each page echoed the same truth. They had been listening. For Rick Klein, ordinary was harder to reclaim. Though he continued volunteering at the community center, he still felt the weight of suspicion. Parents eyed him warily. Children whispered. One Saturday, however, the instructor called him forward. "Today, Mr. Klein is going to demonstrate how to set up our CPR stations. He's been helping here for months." Klein's stomach nodded as all eyes turned toward him. He knelt, unfolding mats, arranging dummies, showing how to count compressions. His hands trembled at first, but soon steadied. When he finished, the instructor led the room in a small round of applause. It wasn't thunderous, but it was real. For Klein, the sound felt heavier than any scolding he'd ever endured. That night, he wrote in his notebook, "Respect is when others trust you with even the smallest task. It's heavier than shame, but it carries hope." At home, Maya sat cross-legged on her bed, her respect journal open. She wrote, "Today I saw kids practicing together. They didn't need me. They only needed the chance to learn. Respect is strongest when it doesn't depend on one person. Respect is ordinary. That's what makes it last." She set down her pencil and smiled faintly. In the weeks that followed, the Bell Initiative expanded again. Schools in other states adopted the program, community centers held respect days. Even churches wove the message into sermons, "Respect is life." The story had become bigger than Maya could follow, but that was the point. She wasn't the center anymore, just the spark. One evening, while walking home with Naomi, Maya passed the mural downtown, herself kneeling beside Mr. Thompson, oranges glowing like suns. This time, children stood in front of it, pointing. "That's her!" one girl squealed, tugging her mother's sleeve. Maya flushed, but the mother smiled. "Yes, honey, but remember, what she did? You can learn too." The girl grinned. "I'm going to." Maya whispered to Naomi, "See, they don't need me to be the hero anymore. They just need to believe they can be." Naomi nudged her shoulder. "Still, you'll always be the reason they started." That night, Klein sat in his apartment flipping through news articles. One headline read, "From useless to a national lesson." The sting of his own word had dulled, replaced by determination. He whispered, "I'll never stop proving it wrong." Closing his notebook, he resolved to speak publicly at the next community forum, not for redemption, but to remind others that respect was a practice anyone could begin, even after failure. As autumn deepened, the city seemed changed. Bus rides were quieter, classrooms more attentive, neighbors quicker to greet each other. Respect had slipped into daily life like a steady heartbeat. And for Maya, the greatest relief was knowing it no longer lived only in her story. It lived in everyone's. The community center auditorium buzzed with voices, the kind of restless energy that comes when people expect a reckoning. Parents, teachers, and students filled the folding chairs. The walls were lined with murals painted by neighborhood kids, bright colors, open hands, the words, "Respect is duty." Maya sat in the second row with her mother and Naomi. She hadn't wanted to come, but Mr. Thompson had called personally. Respect isn't only about saving lives, Maya. It's also about listening when someone tries to change. On stage sat the panel, city officials, the community center director, and, sitting stiffly, his hands clasped, Rick Klein. The former bus driver looked older than he had months ago, the weight of suspension and shame carved into his face. When the moderator introduced him, murmurs spread across the room. Parents whispered. Children leaned forward. Some folded their arms, unwilling to listen. Klein stood slowly, the microphone trembling in his grip. His eyes swept the crowd, landing briefly on Maya. She didn't flinch, but she didn't smile either. He cleared his throat. "My name is Rick Klein. Most of you know me as the bus driver who called a little girl useless." The room went silent. "I won't try to excuse it. I said it. I meant it in that moment, and it was wrong. A man almost died while I shouted down the only person brave enough to act." Gasps rippled, though no one interrupted. "For months I've been carrying that shame. I lost my job. I lost trust. I deserved that. But I've also been learning. Volunteering here, sweeping floors, setting up chairs, it doesn't erase what I did, but it reminds me respect is practiced in small ways over and over." His voice cracked. "I can't undo the word I threw at Maya, but I can prove every day from now on that I was wrong, that children are never useless. That respect belongs to them as much as to anyone." He lowered the microphone, his head bowed. For a long moment, the room stayed quiet. Then, unexpectedly, a voice from the back called, "At least he admitted it." Another murmured, Took him long enough. But then Mr. Thompson rose slowly from his seat, leaning on his cane. Respect isn't only about being right the first time, he said. It's about admitting when you were wrong. Klein failed once, but tonight he chose truth. That matters. The audience stirred. Some nodded. Others folded their arms tighter. But the hostility in the air had softened, even if only slightly. After the forum, Maya walked toward the stage. Klein looked up, startled as she approached. She stopped a few feet away. "You tried to stop me," she said softly. Klein's voice was hoarse. "I know. And I'll never forgive myself for it." Maya studied him, then shook her head. "You don't need my forgiveness. You need to live differently. That's respect." Her words weren't harsh. They weren't kind either. They were honest. Klein nodded, eyes damp. "I will." That night, as the family walked home, Naomi nudged Maya. "You were brave to say that. Braver than I would have been." Maya shrugged. Respect isn't easy, but it's the truth. Back in her room, Maya opened her respect journal. She wrote, "Tonight I listened to the man who called me useless. He admitted it. That didn't fix anything, but it mattered." Respect is when someone tells the truth, even when it hurts them. Respect is also knowing forgiveness isn't a gift you give, but a life they have to live into. She closed the journal and tucked it beneath her pillow. Klein walked home through quiet streets, the night air cool against his face. The sound of the forum lingered in his ears, not applause, not forgiveness, but something gentler, acknowledgement. When he reached his apartment, he opened his own notebook. He wrote, "Respect is speaking truth in public when hiding would be easier. Respect is facing the people you failed. Respect is not being done after one confession. It's the start of all the rest." He set down the pen and for the first time in months felt his chest ease. The next day, news outlets reported on the forum. The headline read, "Bus driver admits guilt, vows to live respect." The story emphasized Maya's words, "You don't need my forgiveness. You need to live differently." Parents debated the meaning, teachers discussed it in class, and students repeated it on playgrounds. The phrase became a new addition to the respect movement, live differently. Maya didn't want to be quoted again, but when she heard children chanting those words at recess, she smiled faintly. In the respect classroom, Mr. Thompson wrote the phrase on the board. Respect is living differently. He turned to his students. That came from Maya. And from Klein too, in a way. Even mistakes can teach if we listen. The students scribbled the words into their journals, heads bent with focus. That evening, Maya sat with her mother on the porch, watching the sun dip low. "Do you think he'll change?" Maya asked quietly. Her mother took a long breath. "That's up to him, but you gave him the chance. That's all anyone can do." Maya nodded, leaning against her mother's shoulder. "Then I hope he does." Winter sunlight spilled across the steps of the state capitol as lawmakers filed inside, clutching folders thick with drafts and notes. The bill on the table that day was no ordinary piece of legislation. It carried a name that had become familiar across America, the Bell Initiative Act. In classrooms nationwide, children already practiced CPR. Community centers held free training sessions. But now, Congress was preparing to make it law. Every school in the country would teach students the basics of emergency response. Maya sat at home with her family, watching the proceedings on television. Her hands curled around a mug of cocoa, steam fogging the screen of her glasses. On the floor of the house, a representative stood. "We are here because one child reminded us that respect is action." Maya Bell's courage proved that a small pair of hands can save a life. Today, we ensure every child has that chance. The chamber erupted in applause. The gavel fell, the bill passed, and history was made. Naomi leapt from the couch. "It passed! Maya, it passed because of you!" Maya pressed her mug against her chest, her heart pounding. "Not just me, because of Mr. Thompson, because of Aunt Nina, because kids everywhere can do it." Her mother kissed her forehead, eyes shining. "Still, baby, you sparked it. Never forget that." At the respect classroom, Mr. Thompson wheeled in a TV to show the students the news clip. When the final vote tally flashed on the screen, the children erupted in cheers. He held up a respect journal. "Remember, this law may carry Maya's name, but it belongs to all of you. Every page you write, every choice you make, it builds the world this law protects." One girl raised her hand. "Mr. Thompson, can we write to Maya and tell her thank you?" Mr. Thompson smiled. "You don't need to thank her. You need to carry her lesson. But yes, you can write." By the end of the week, Maya received a bundle of journals filled with drawings and notes, stick figures kneeling over mannequins, children holding hands, the words "not useless" scrawled in crayon. She read each one carefully, tears glistening in her eyes. For Rick Klein, the passing of the law was another reminder of how far respect had traveled beyond him. He had once tried to stop it, to silence it. Now it was written into law. At the community center that evening, the instructor asked him to share a few words with the group. Klein stiffened. He wasn't used to microphones anymore, but this time he didn't refuse. He cleared his throat. "I don't deserve a voice here, but I want to say this. When I called Maya useless, I was blind. She proved me wrong. You all proved me wrong. Respect is not in words, it's in what we do. Every chair I stack, every floor I sweep, I remind myself of that. And tonight, I want to thank you for letting me keep trying." The room stayed quiet for a beat. Then, slowly, scattered applause began. It wasn't everyone, but it was enough. Klein's chest tightened. For the first time in months, the sound didn't feel like judgment. It felt like hope. That night, he wrote in his notebook, "Respect is when people who doubted you begin to see your work. It's the smallest applause, but it means the most." Meanwhile, Maya's school held a special assembly to celebrate the new law. The gym buzzed with excitement as teachers explained what it meant. The principal addressed the students. "Because of Maya, because of all of you, our state helped lead the way. Now the entire country will learn what you already know, that respect is not optional, it is duty." The crowd cheered. Maya blushed and sank lower in her seat, but Jules nudged her. "You can't hide from this, just own it." During the assembly, each student practiced compressions in unison, the gym echoing with the sound of children counting aloud. The chant rolled like thunder. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maya felt the rhythm vibrate in her chest. It no longer belonged to her alone. It belonged to everyone. That evening, Maya opened her respect journal and wrote, "Today the law passed. The whole country will learn. But respect doesn't live in laws. It lives in choices. Small ones, ordinary ones." I hope kids remember that the law is only a guide. The practice is theirs. She closed the book, feeling both lighter and older than her years. At the same time, Klein sat in his small apartment, pen in hand. He wrote, "Respect is not waiting for the world to change. Respect is changing yourself first. The law carries her name, but the practice belongs to us all. I will keep proving it, quietly, daily, until the end of my road." He closed the notebook, set it beside his bed, and whispered, "Live differently." Outside, candles flickered in windows across the city. Families lit them not for mourning but for duty, for the reminder that respect, once sparked by a single act, could live on in every hand willing to act. And in that glow, both Maya and Klein found their peace for the night. The morning after the Bell Initiative became Lowell, Maya woke to the sound of her alarm beeping and sunlight sneaking through her curtains. The world outside had changed. Headlines carried her name. Schools across America prepared for new programs. But her room was still scattered with homework papers and colored pencils. Ordinary life was waiting. At breakfast, her mother slid a plate of toast toward her. "History was made yesterday," she said softly. Maya chewed slowly. "And today, I still have math homework." Naomi laughed. "See, fame doesn't excuse fractions." Their mother smiled. "That's the balance, baby. History one day, dishes the next." Maya grinned faintly. Ordinary felt good. At school, things looked a little different. The hallways were plastered with posters about the new national program. Respect is action. Learn CPR. Teachers buzzed with excitement, talking about upcoming training sessions. During recess, a group of kids surrounded Maya. "We saw you on TV again," one said. Another added, "Do you think we'll really save someone too?" Maya shrugged, her voice quiet but firm. "You might. And even if you don't, you'll know how. That's what matters." The kids nodded solemnly, their chatter turning to practice pushes on a soccer ball, chanting numbers just as they'd seen her do. For the first time, Maya realized she didn't have to carry the weight alone. The lesson had taken root in others. At the Respect classroom, Mr. Thompson had prepared something special. The community hall was packed with children and parents, the walls lined with journals and drawings. On the chalkboard he'd written, "The Maya Bell Class of Respect." When Maya entered, the crowd erupted in applause. Mr. Thompson waved her to the front. "Today we dedicate this classroom in her honor. Not because she wanted it, but because she showed us what respect looks like. He placed a framed copy of her words on the wall. Respect isn't useless. Respect is life. Maya's cheeks burned. I don't need my name on the wall, she whispered to him. Mr. Thompson smiled. Maybe not, but the children need it there, to remind them of the truth. She glanced around at the students scribbling in their journals, and for once she didn't argue. Meanwhile, Rick Klein continued his quiet journey. Suspended still, he swept floors and stacked chairs at workshops. Some parents ignored him, others muttered under their breath, but little by little, he noticed the edge softening. One evening, as he carried a stack of mats, a woman stopped him. "You're Klein, right?" she asked, her voice wary. He braced for anger. "Yes." She studied him, then nodded. "I don't forget what you said, but I see you here working every week. My son said you helped him fix his mat. Keep at it. Respect takes time." Her words weren't warm, but they weren't sharp either. They were a sliver of trust. That night, in his notebook, Klein wrote, "Respect isn't forgiveness. It's the chance to earn trust again, piece by piece." At home, Maya curled on her bed with her respect journal. She flipped through past entries, her first shaky words after saving Mr. Thompson, her thoughts on the city medal, her fears before Washington. Each page felt like a map of her journey. She opened to a blank page and wrote, "Today I saw my name on a classroom wall. It made me nervous, but then I saw the kids writing in their journals. Respect doesn't belong to me, it belongs to all of us." Ordinary days matter most, because they prove respect is part of life, not just headlines. She set down her pencil and sighed with contentment. Across the city, Klein placed his own notebook on his nightstand. He read over his latest entry, tracing the words with a calloused finger. For the first time in months, he felt the smallest sense of belonging. And in living rooms across America, children counted compressions on pillows and teddy bears, repeating the mantra Maya had carried from her aunt, "Push steady, push hard. Don't be afraid to be loud for the right reasons." Respect had become a daily practice, not just a story. And in that ordinariness, both Maya and Klein found a measure of peace. By early spring, the Bell Initiative had moved from headlines into everyday life. What once felt like a movement was now routine. Children in gymnasiums practicing compressions, parents talking about respect journals at PTA meetings, even churches hosting weekend CPR classes. For Maya, life carried a strange rhythm. She still had spelling tests and science projects, but her name often appeared in places she'd never expect, on TV, in magazines, even in casual conversations overheard at the grocery store. Strangers sometimes recognized her and whispered, "That's the girl." At first it embarrassed her, but slowly she began to see it differently. They weren't pointing at her, they were pointing at the lesson. At school, Ms. Chan asked the class to write essays on what respect meant to them. As students read aloud, Maya listened closely. One boy said, "Respect is helping my mom after work without being asked." A girl added, "Respect is telling the truth even when it's hard." The little boy with the apple stain wrote, "Respect is saving people, like Maya did." But also, respect is saving someone from feeling small. When the boy finished, the class clapped. Maya smiled faintly, touched in a way she hadn't expected. She opened her notebook later and wrote, "Respect is not only saving a breath, it's saving someone's dignity." Meanwhile, at the Respect classroom, Mr. Thompson expanded his sessions. Children came from different neighborhoods, sometimes even other cities. The hall buzzed with the sound of pens scratching and voices reading aloud their journal entries. He called Maya forward one afternoon. "Tell them what you've written lately," he encouraged. Maya hesitated, but then opened her journal. Her voice was steady. "I wrote that respect is strongest when it's ordinary, when nobody is watching and nobody claps." The children nodded, some whispering the words to themselves as though committing them to memory. Mr. Thompson beamed. "See, she's not only a hero, she's a teacher." For Rick Klein, progress came in small, almost invisible steps. He still swept floors at the community center, stacked chairs, and stayed after sessions. The sting of whispers remained, but people's eyes began to soften. One afternoon, the instructor asked him to help demonstrate setting up equipment. Nervously, he agreed. As he worked, children watched attentively. When he finished, a few clapped politely. Klein's chest tightened. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Acknowledgement. Later, as he walked home, a teenager caught up with him. "Hey," the boy said awkwardly. My little sister said you helped fix her mat. She said you were nice. Klein froze, then nodded. I'm glad. That night he wrote, respect is when someone younger sees you differently than before. It's a second chance, fragile but real. At home, Maya continued to balance ordinary and extraordinary. She folded laundry with her mother, argued with Naomi over TV shows, and still struggled with math homework. But every evening, she opened her respect journal. One night, she wrote, I used to think respect was only about big moments, like saving Mr. Thompson, but I think it's really about what you do every day. Respect is washing dishes without being asked. Respect is saying sorry when you mess up. Respect is listening, even when you'd rather talk. She closed the journal, smiling faintly. Ordinary was starting to feel extraordinary. The next week, the community center hosted a respect fair, inviting families, teachers, and city officials. Booths displayed journals, children demonstrated CPR, and parents shared stories. Maya walked through the hall, amazed at the scale. At one booth, a boy proudly showed her his journal. I wrote about standing up for my friend when someone teased him. That's respect, Maya said, her voice warm. Across the room, Klein moved quietly between booths, helping where he could. When one family recognized him, he braced for anger. But instead, the father said, You're working hard here. Keep it up. Klein nodded, his throat tight. By the end of the evening, Maya realized something important. Respect had outgrown her. It was no longer her story alone. It was a wider circle now. Families, teachers, children, even people like Klein who were learning to live differently. And that, she thought, was exactly how it should be. By early summer, the Bell Initiative had moved far beyond Houston. News of Maya's act and the national law reached classrooms overseas. A teacher in Canada emailed Mr. Thompson, Your students' courage inspired us to start our own CPR program. In Japan, a children's magazine ran a feature titled Hands That Save Lives, with an illustration of Maya pressing her palms to a chest. Letters began arriving at Maya's school from places she had never heard of. Kenya, Brazil, South Korea, all saying the same thing. We learned because of you. When the principal showed Maya the stack, her eyes went wide. They're all writing to me? Her mother nodded gently. To you, yes, but really, to the truth you reminded them of. Maya whispered, It's bigger than I ever thought. At school, life settled into its rhythm. She studied, played at recess, argued with Naomi over chores. Some classmates still whispered about her being a hero, but she insisted on being treated normally. During lunch one day, Jules teased, You're famous everywhere, even in countries I can't spell. You sure you're not going to start your own superhero team? Maya shook her head quickly. I'm not a superhero. I'm just someone who remembered what to do. The little boy with the apple stain leaned across the table. But that's what makes you different. You didn't freeze. Maya smiled faintly. Maybe, but now nobody has to freeze, because we're all learning. At the Respect classroom, the walls grew crowded with new murals, each painted by children from different neighborhoods. One showed a row of kids kneeling in unison, chanting numbers. Another depicted open hands lifting a heart. Mr. Thompson gathered the group. Respect has traveled farther than we imagined. It belongs to children in every country now. But remember, your journals matter too. Write the small things, the daily things. That's how respect lives. A girl stood and read from hers. I helped my brother with his reading homework. That's respect. A boy added, I stopped teasing someone when I realized it hurt them. That's respect. The room filled with nods. Maya listened, her chest warm. This wasn't her lesson anymore. It was theirs. For Rick Klein, the journey remained slow. Though still shadowed by whispers, he noticed the weight easing. At the community center, parents who once glared now greeted him with short nods. Children asked him to hold their journals while they practiced CPR. One Saturday, the instructor asked him to say a few words. Klein hesitated, then faced the group. I used to think respect was about being in charge, about giving orders. But I was wrong. Respect is about service. It's about helping without needing credit. The room was quiet, but this time no hostility lingered. A few parents clapped. A child raised her hand. Will you keep coming back? Klein's voice cracked. As long as they'll have me. That evening, he wrote in his notebook, Respect is when the people you once hurt begin to believe you mean your change. Back at home, Maya curled on her bed with her respect journal. She flipped through past pages, each one a marker of growth. She opened to a blank sheet and wrote, Today I learned people in other countries are practicing too. That means respect doesn't belong to Houston or to me. It belongs to everyone who chooses it. Respect is the only language the whole world can speak. She underlined the last sentence twice before closing the journal. The next week, the school hosted an international video call with classrooms abroad. Children from 3 continents appeared on the projector screen, waving excitedly. One boy in Kenya said, "We learned CPR because of you." A girl in Japan held up a drawing, Maya surrounded by students chanting numbers. A group in Brazil shouted together, "Not useless!" The gym erupted in laughter and cheers. Maya covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed but happy. Later she wrote in her journal, "Respect crossed the ocean today. I never thought my small hands could reach that far, but maybe respect is bigger than oceans." Meanwhile, Klein walked home from the community center one evening. A neighbor who once avoided eye contact stopped him. "Heard you've been helping kids. My daughter came home saying you showed her how to set up her mat." "Keep it up." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Klein nodded quietly, his chest heavy with gratitude. That night he whispered to himself before bed, "Live differently, every day." Respect had begun as a chant in one courtroom, then a cry on one sidewalk. Now it moved across oceans, written in journals, painted in murals, spoken in many tongues. And in that growing circle, Maya felt lighter. She didn't need to carry it alone. The world had taken it up. The day of the final ceremony arrived on a warm June afternoon. Houston's main square was decorated with banners that read "Respect is life" in bold colors. Families gathered with children clutching journals, teachers marched in groups, and veterans stood proudly in uniform. It wasn't just a celebration of one girl anymore. It was a celebration of a movement that had touched the world. Maya stood nervously at the edge of the stage with her mother and Naomi. She wore a simple dress, her medal hidden beneath the fabric. Reporters hovered, but today felt different from all the other events. This wasn't about cameras or headlines. It was about closing the circle. Mr. Thompson was the first to speak. Leaning on his cane, his voice carried across the square. "I was the man saved by Maya's hands, but today I stand as a student in her classroom. She taught us all that respect is not a word. It is an act. Because of her, I breathe. Because of her, children everywhere will be ready to act." Applause thundered. Maya blinked back tears. Next, the mayor stepped forward. "Today we dedicate this square's newest mural, painted by our own children. It honors not only Maya but the respect movement that has spread across the nation and the world. May it remind us every day that no one is useless and that respect belongs to everyone." The curtain dropped, revealing a massive mural. Maya kneeling beside Mr. Thompson, oranges glowing around them, children of every color and age standing behind her with hands joined. At the top, in bold letters, the words, "Respect lives here." The crowd erupted in cheers. Maya stared at the mural, stunned. "It's not just me," she whispered. "It's everyone." Her mother hugged her shoulders. "Exactly, baby. That's the point." In the crowd, Rick Klein stood quietly at the back. He hadn't expected to be acknowledged, but the community center director suddenly called his name. Murmurs rippled as he stepped forward. The director spoke firmly. "Rick Klein once failed this city, this child, and this movement. But in the months since, he has worked, not with words, but with action. Respect is practice, and practice is change. Today we recognize that he has begun to live differently." The applause that followed wasn't loud at first, but it grew, spreading through the crowd until it filled the square. Klein's throat tightened as he bowed his head. For the first time, he felt not shame, but a fragile kind of dignity. Maya watched from the stage. She didn't smile, but she nodded once, a quiet sign of acceptance. Klein met her eyes, and in that small exchange, respect passed between them. Not perfect, not complete, but real. When it was her turn to speak, Maya stepped to the microphone, her journal clutched in her hands. The square fell silent. "I don't have much to say," she began softly. "Only this. Respect isn't medals or murals or even laws. Respect is what you choose when no one is watching. It's listening when someone feels small. It's admitting when you're wrong. It's helping with your hands and your heart. I'm not a hero, I'm just someone who remembered. And now I hope all of you will remember too. Respect isn't useless. Respect is life." The square exploded in applause, chants rising again. "Respect, respect, respect." That evening, as the sun dipped low and the square emptied, Maya sat on her porch at home with her respect journal open. She wrote her final entry for the year. Today they painted a mural with my face, but what mattered most was seeing everyone else in it too. Respect doesn't belong to me, it belongs to all of us. And it will live as long as we practice it, quietly, daily, together. She closed the journal, slipped it beneath her pillow, and whispered, "That's enough." Across town, Klein sat at his kitchen table, his own notebook open. He wrote, "Respect is not redemption. It is persistence. It is proving with every small act that you can be different from who you were. I will keep living differently. That is my promise." He set down his pen, folded his hands, and for the first time in years, felt peace. In homes across the city, children wrote in their journals. Parents tucked them in with pride, and teachers planned new lessons. Respect had started with one sidewalk, one girl, and one act of courage. Now it was everywhere. And in that, justice had been served, not by punishment, but by transformation. Respect lived on.